Okay. Hello, everyone. A mind, a mind beyond words. The ancient yogis responded to the question, what is the purpose of life? By the statement that it is the entertainment of the gods. And when we look at how gods, the idea, the concept, how it has had an influence on human consciousness, and something remarkable that has been misinterpreted in history is that our species did something smart. And it's something all of our ancestors did. That they were alone in the world. And then they decided it would be alive. And then suddenly, gods were walking on clouds. Angels and demons were everywhere. Mankind was not alone in his mind. There came the invisible others. Whether it's the idea of God, whether it's the idea of a demigod, deity, whatever, demi-human, demon, whatever class of entity there is here. An interstellar audience watches the human species like their child growing up in front of them. You know, imagine in the future extraterrestrials land down and they look like us. And we're like, whoa, are you guys aliens? And they're like, yo, we're your cousins. We're your cousin species from another planet. You know, like... Imagine there are advanced civilizations, like example, like paternal civilizations. Imagine uncle and aunt civilizations. The idea is that something was alone in the world and it decided not to be, and when it decided not to be, the world was like, all right, I mean, the human being decided, to seek God, so, it's like, what can I do, What I find fascinating is that everybody is waiting. Consciousness is waiting. And its whole life, it thinks it's waiting for the world. Many people are waiting for a savior. But what if consciousness is waiting? That part's true, but it's waiting not for the world. It is waiting for itself to be the world, just like the pilot turns on the engines of the plane, just like the driver presses the gas pedal, just like the runner runs ahead. In psychology circles, there seems to be this idea that behavior passes down, not just genetical features, behavioral patterns as well. And so I don't have kids, but I thought if I did, and they had kids, and they had kids, and they had kids, in some sense, what sort of equipment, what sort of genetics am I passing down to my children? I don't have children, but I was thinking, if I did, what am I passing down? And I thought, am I passing down my fears? Am I passing down my strengths? Is it a, random like lottery or bingo selection? And you know what I have realized? I have realized that man is not here to be controlled and is not here to control. It's not here. He's not here to be controlled by everything, and he's not here to control everything. Man is here to perform. He's here to do an action. Our species, sure, it could have a great story of an endless purpose like the advanced civilization. Or Mr.Within Civilization 2.0. A mind beyond words is a suggestion to a reality that is not symbolically contained. And someone would be like, Mr. Within, what do you mean symbolically not contained? It means attention is being space, but it's being space so well that it's choosing to zoom in on certain components of reality. I mean, just think about it right now. Are you who you think you are? Are you what others think you are? Or are you what the world is? And I'm inclined to the last one. You see, I'm a being right now. I'm in a very unique position as a human being, as just a conscious entity in this world. I'm in this position where I've had certain understandings about existence. I've had certain understandings about experience. I've watched the two endless days play along. Sometimes when I give these talks, it's like I'm watching my invisible self dance. You see, most people, their context of life has not befriended their concept of life. What this means is that their mind is not their ally. Most people are performing, most people are suiting in accordance to their, let's say, best vision. And I was thinking like, is there a right way or a wrong way to like wash, let's say wash my socks, is there a right way or a wrong way to like fold my t-shirts? Is there a right way and wrong way to, in some sense, jump up in the air? And I realized the right and wrong is based on what we want. The reason there is morality, if all the evil people on the planet don't understand what the good people are doing, if all the chaotic entities in this realm do not understand what the ordered are doing, the ordered are ahead of the game. Why? Because it has been chaos. Do you understand? An evil being is like renouncing novelty. That's the I don't want to say that's the curse of evil, but the problem of evil, if you notice, like hell is a loop. Have you noticed that? In monotheistic traditions, hell is a loop. The way in Dante's Inferno, how that imagery became associated to the Christian heaven and hell, was this imagery that there are 7 levels and shit's repeating down there. And what it's an implication of hell is that it's unconscious dualism. That's what it means. That's what a hell loop translates into, a self in a world that is repeating. Now, human consciousness, unlike our other fellow species, like other species on the planet, other fellow species on the planet, right? We have awareness. And we have awareness of self. This is the divine glow. This is what the soul is doing, that it makes us feel nothing else has a soul. Nothing lesser than the human consciousness has a soul. I found it super fascinating that out of all the cultures in the world, I was raised in Iran, and in Iranian food is like kebabs, rice, and tomato. Do you know what I'm saying? But it was only in the Vedic tradition where I've realized that consciousness is taking shape not in accordance to what others think is good or evil, but based on its responsibility level. So if you demonstrate savageness in this realm, you're going to, throughout the lifetime, attract beings that are savage. So after this lifetime, you get pulled by them. Do you know? You see, the idea is man is so afraid of death, so afraid of death that he doesn't care to want to understand what the unknown is before he dies. And somebody's going to be like, Mr. Within, by definition, how can you understand the unknown? There's only one way I've found. And people are going to be like, what's this way? This is the way I have found. If somebody says what's like spirituality, this is it. At some point, all the opinions, all the memories, all the ideas I have had on myself, I realize these are all my known, this is all my known self. So at some point in this lifetime, I became disinterested in my known self. When I became disinterested, I retained an awareness and a realization that how am I knowing that I am knowing, or how am I knowing that I don't know? My mind challenged my persona. The depth of my vision challenged my personality. And you see the antiquity of the soul, dear listeners. It is not outer. There is an inner life this whole time. And they have told us imagination is not real, and they have, shouted at kids daydreaming in classrooms, not realizing that it's an advancement of the mind. It's your birthright. It's a permission of consciousness to move in all it is constituting as. Do you understand what that means? That means your unknown attention is acting as a king, and all the totality of existence in your awareness is your kingdom. But you are not the king in the sense that you are not an idea. The thing is that, if you look at this world from a distance, I'm someone who, this might sound strange to the viewers, but when I was young, I didn't feel worthy. I felt a sort of metaphysical karmic exile, and I didn't feel worthy. I didn't feel worthy to be a human being among other human beings. And because of this feeling, it was an inner flaw. Years later I understood, but because of this feeling, I ended up watching from hidden corners this world. You don't understand what kind of person I am. I'm a person who, in certain moments, things are going incredible, everything's great, right? And then suddenly I leave and I go find a moment where no one's been to before. You don't understand. There's something about finding the new that just energizes your soul. There was a time where I was like, who has the time to go explore? Just sit somewhere, have good living conditions, a good wife, family, and that's it. I thought that was the game plan, right? But then a part of me was like, why did the explorers explore? Why did human beings go where no other human beings had gone? And this made me realize, because we don't know the mystery of consciousness, because we don't know how advanced we can be, I cannot use this lifetime to enjoy. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm not saying I can't enjoy. I've had many blessed moments of joy, but I'm saying unless the whole thing, you understand? It's you can't be a good concept inside a bad context. Because then wherever you go, you'll feel bad things will happen. You're like, I'm a good person, why are bad things happening? No shit, because the world isn't good yet. Bad things happen because entities, which are energy directed by attention, have not realized there are more advanced ways of being here. There are. You might be someone who you think that violence is the best way. You might think that everybody's trying to be good, so they're a naive fool, so you take advantage. But let me tell you the cost of evil. Everything has a cost. Just like you go to Amazon and you see the price of objects, Mr.Within will tell you also the price of certain subjective actions. And the price of evil, this is the saddest thing. Do you understand? It's not that evil like, hurt the good person's feelings and the good person's like, yo man, somebody come and save this moment. It's not like that. The biggest tragedy of evil is that it gets rid of something. It gets rid of genius unnecessarily. Do you understand? Let me give you an example. 85 million human beings died. World War I and II, and we're all casually reading this in history books as if, yeah, let's be human after this. 85 million people died. For what? For the ego of nations. Sometimes, my left hand, my right hand, holds my left hand. Because my left hand wants to just open a portal and release these lions that are like what do you call it? Like bigger than skyscrapers, just in some sense tearing apart inefficiency in the realm. But why does my right hand hold my left hand from rage? Because the world started from chaos. If we do chaotic shit, it de-evolves back to what it was. Order is the opportunity. Order is the rare opportunity. You being an organized entity that can interact in an organized system. There was a time where I was like, yo, my God, what's worse than an inefficient, dishonest, corrupt system, that doesn't understand the value of the individual, and it's kind of like a cheese grinder or something. And I realized what's worse than having an evil system is having no system. That's what I realized. So that means evil is above nothing. Okay? But it is not above good. Why? Because evil is unconscious access to reality. An evil person is getting emotional satisfaction like a savage animal, I think sometimes. There's been times where I've tried to fathom myself as an evil person, right? And there was a time where I shocked myself. I was like, yo, imagine if I was someone speaking against civilization. Do you understand? Like if I had used all my creativity to And the Batman movie showed me that, you try to be a Joker, you get punched in the face by people in costumes. Like that's you try to be evil, you realize you're destroying your own world. And that is really evil. Why? Because you have refused to understand the value of efficient action. You see, good and evil, these are old world morality. Do you know what in an advanced civilization it's going to be? It's going to just be efficient action and inefficient action, and there's going to be so many different levels of actions. AI is going to help mankind create the most incredible justice system known to the world. Sometimes I wish, all the, sons and daughters of billionaires and trillionaires who are bored, sometimes I wish they could come and assemble into a team, and I could help assist that might towards a worthy direction, Because really what it is to be honest, it's all about scale. When I was young, I was playing with Legos. Then I played soccer, right? The game was not just creating something with something else, it was creating something with yourself. Then in some sense I became a podcaster. It's as if I'm someone who wanted to invent stuff in the outer realms, but in the middle of an engineering degree I decided to become a poet. We all walk alone until we realize when we can see beyond ourselves we are not alone. I am waiting. I think people indirectly know. I am waiting till I see the fruits of the advanced civilization. Do you know what it is? Let me tell you what's going on. Pretty much there's an inefficient system. This inefficient system is so ancient that you can't get rid of it and you can't update it quickly. So we have made a civilization that is updating to the speed of our evolution. But now evolution has changed from the environment moving us to us moving our attention in the environment. When I was young, how would I say it? I had a very industrial grandfather, right? And he called all his grandsons and he said, whatever you do in life, go for the great. And when I was younger, I was like, Grandpa, religion is telling me to be humble. Like a fool, I was and then my grandpa was like, no, seek greatness in every moment. Later on, that's what the sentence meant to me. And then I was like, why? Why seek greatness every moment? And then I realized, because why not? I realized my mind cannot come up with an argument of why I shouldn't be in an advanced world and an advanced self in this moment. Why shouldn't be in an advanced world? Do you understand? That means there's no reason for 8 billion creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere to step out of their inner private servers, subjective servers, and to begin becoming neutral agents. Do you understand? If the species has an ability not to change yourself, I'm not telling people have to become personality-less, but I'm saying neutrality serves when we're trying to get everybody on the same page. And so my vision is, this is something I've said in these Mr.Within talks, this is my obsession pretty much. I shouldn't say obsession, my passion. The most important technologies are health and sky cities. These two are the most important technologies. And if SpaceX ever needs a philosopher, and reach out, guys, reach out. Imagine somebody comes and challenges Elon Musk, like, yo, why should we go to Mars? And Elon Musk doesn't know what to say. He said his arguments before, but people are so, he's like, yo, it's like, come and talk to our SpaceX philosopher. He'll challenge all your moral concerns, your moral relativistic concerns. One day, guys, one day, I think I will say something in front of like the UN or somewhere, and people are gonna be like, yo, what's this heavy thing gonna be? And everybody's gonna laugh. Can you imagine, like, in the middle of a UN speech I start like deciding to be an artist and singing career? No. It's like Obama, for example. Imagine Obama in the middle of his speech when he was president, like in the middle of his speech, starts breakdancing in the most next level way. It's like, yo, no president of a nation could do that. No president of a nation could ever do 10 air tracks, in front of the president of other nations. Can you imagine in the future, like, give it 100 years, all the presidents of nations are going to become breakdancers, and instead of nations going to war. The world leaders are just going to be breakdancing for resources, you know? You know, guys, I thought like, you know, somebody once suggested like, you know, I was my mind, whether people suggested or not, my mind at some point wondered like, yo, should I go into politics? And then I realized, no, let me tell you why. Because I realized if I go in politics and if I'm exposed to corrupt and evil actions, you see, this is my attitude, okay? That if I choose to play a game, this might sound bizarre, not egotistically, because there's only one way to go forth. Based on the outcome of the game, I choose to hold that archetype. So what that means is if I choose to, in some sense, enter politics, it would be literally like war. It would be like me choosing to go to war. Do you understand? Right? And in this lifetime, there is so much mysteries about human psychology that I don't have time, do you understand, to go and try to go into the politics. Because let me tell you what the destiny of politics is going to be. Give it 100 years, give it 200 years, 400 years. At some point, it's going to be super intelligent computers giving us options, and human beings, members of a nation, just vote on the options and the policies. They don't vote on the presidents. It becomes like AI gives you multiple choice, and the leaders and all the people in the nation vote on the multiple choice actions. Do you understand? And the reason was like, because if I was to go into politics, my attitude would be an attitude of purification. Do you understand? Because just like a designer, the designer has to set up his table and then start designing. If I go into a political system and the political system has flaws, then a person has to go fix the corruption. In order to go fix the corruption, before I have to be a politician, I have to go, in some sense, be someone who can change the law. Do you understand? Somebody who completely understands all the law, right? And because that's something that's like, it's probably takes lifetimes, right? If in the future there's a chip, like suddenly like Neo learned Kung Fu, oh my God, I learned everything about law, you know? But the reason I'm saying this, the idea is that in managing a system, I will treat it like a boat. I will see like, where's the hole in the boat? And that's where the political strategy starts from, right? You attack the most important issue, right? You see, for example, I saw the political debates on, in 2016, they became incredibly famous. I think the world had never become fascinated into politics that much. In the outcome of the collision of political personalities that much, right? And so these political leaders were there fighting. It was weird because it's like you're looking at two potential leaders of a nation, and they're like literally like kids in a school. It's like, yo, Billy's a dumbass. It's like, and the other guy's like, no, man, you're a dumbass. It was like one of those kind of like childish level of banter where it was as if like people were so unaware of politics that they had more understanding of a personality. Do you understand? The world has come to a point where people are not caring to actually understand what the politicians are standing for, right? Because people are so busy, because the conditions of living, like this is something what I think politicians that like corrupted the system didn't expect. That people will reach a point where they're like, yo man, I'm too busy and life is too tough to vote. And they're gonna be like, whoa, we created a system that people you can't even comfortably vote. But of course, guys, I don't have that much, I'm gonna go interview somebody who has incredible knowledge on politics and ask all these questions. But my vision is that politics, it's a worthy task. Anybody who's a politician right now listening to me, you don't understand the golden opportunity you have. Just wake up tomorrow and try to be the kindest being on the planet and the most benevolent being on the planet, and just see what happens. Just see what happens. Can you imagine all politicians are forced in their 4-year term to have a year of benevolence? And people are like, what does that mean? The politician has to help. Just like how there were kings back in the day. Do you understand? Who the crowd would come to. I mean, probably something like this exists, but anyways, what I'm trying to say is that we have reached this point in human history where we are understanding that the definition we had of the human was incomplete. And we don't need to freak out because we've just reached the starting point. Our ancestors, something we and all of our ancestors have had in common. Before they knew who they were and what they were and where they were, they knew they were. And that's the core emotion, the emotion of being. When it comes to the inner realms, those who are acquainted with being, it means that you have been watching as your whole moment, as your whole unknown moment of being. Every moment where it has been known. So I'm pretty much saying the species has reached a point where it's not an idea, it's not an object projecting a subject and then that subject mysteriously moving the object. It's actually an unknown awareness, and this unknown awareness means that we're not just experiencing existing as our bodies, we're also experiencing the existence of knowing the space where our body is existing. Like the same way right now I know my hand is here, I also know the space between my hand and like that sign over there is. You know what I'm saying? Yo, can you imagine in the year of benevolence, the first year of benevolence of the president, right? Imagine the president has to go in some sense give speeches every day or go do something every day, right? Give speeches on, let's say, I mean, let me tell you what it is. This is the bizarre thing. That we've reached a point where we don't know if human beings can be governed, if they want to be governed, or it's even efficient to be governed, right? So it's kind of like this point where, you know, the government was acting like the parent and being like, yo kiddo, just let me take care of you, you know, here's your like your space, your money, everything, you know, the services, the infrastructure, all of this. But now it's no longer a child and it's no longer a teenager. You understand? The government is going to become a resource station. Why? Because people are going to begin having enough information. See, back in the day, people didn't have information. Okay? Think of like the 1900s, right? Think of like the TV, black and white TVs back in the day. People had to rely on a governing system, right? They just wanted to exist and occupy a role in the tribe, and then the whole administration of the tribe was in the hand of somebody else. But there was a time I got an inner realm vision of the future of humanity. I gave a talk in 2015 called The One Student Mind. And I had this vision that children, all educational systems are going to have this club called The One Student Mind. And the idea is that it's in some sense pretty much students taking care of students. That means I realize better than teachers, better than parents, who can help students than students. Their peers, right? But imagine a global peerhood. That means resources even in the future can be shared. The one student mind is going to be an incredible future formation of a student global government. But it's going to have a very small global, it's going to be in the bottom of the political system. Not the bottom, but it's going to be upper above, let's say, dimensions of crime and what departments of crime. But anyways, I saw this vision that children are just traveling all around the world. That's it. We don't realize how much airplane technology is going to change in the next 100 years, right? Transport is going to change. And you know, right now, all the nations are like, yo, we got immigration issues. Everybody has immigration issues. You know why we have immigration issues? Because we have walls. Because we have borders. So I was thinking like, yo, how can this work? And I thought, what if the species, while being separate nations on the planet, begin simultaneously taking up the responsibility as acting as sub-nations of one complete nation named humanity? And the nation of humanity in my science fiction, I've written it NOH, no. Or nation of advanced humanity, Noah, whatever you like to call it. These are visions, guys. What can we do as a human being? We can physically move stuff, we can physically create stuff, or we can use, in some sense, non-physically create. But it's strange, you know? A part of us feels that life should be complete. A part of us sees that it is incomplete. And to be honest, it's kind of like an actor in the middle of a film suddenly notices the film set and notices the director is not on the film set. And the actor's like, what should I do? And the actor, this is the error of the yogi. The yogi's like, yo, I'm going to act enlightened. I'm the director. I'm God. I'm going to choose my enlightenment. I'm going to leave the film set. And so the actor, like the yogi, goes and sits down and stops being an actor. And then the film director comes in and says, yo, man, why are you not being an actor? Play the part. And the actor says, no, man, I want to be the director, you know. And the director explains to the actor that there's things that he doesn't know that the director knows. So he has to be the director. And then Arjuna is in some sense like, all right, Krishna. You know? You know, the whole point of this is that there's something more important than our dualistic relationship with our reality. You know, guys, I just read the chat section. Somebody's driving, listening to this. And guess what? I'm in my, personal studio, my car, in front of a Starbucks, giving this talk, in front of humanity, People don't know, but I have on my bucket list different places in the world I want to give talks in. One is on top of a tree. But I guess right now I'm on top of the tree of life. You see, guys, poetry is just pointing to the real. The real is the context of existence. As a being, there could be many definitions generated by the mind. When I say a mind beyond words, I'm suggesting that you are aware of language before you act as it. I thought spirituality was a type of escapism. I thought that escapism was necessary. I tried to renounce the world. Then I realized I don't know what I'm renouncing. Then I realized I don't know who is renouncing. Then I realized it's unknown. Then I realized, oh my God, there's an unknown air in the moment. Then I realized why the Upanishad said the seer of the seen is inconceivable. Then I realized that the human mind has limitations and the limitless becomes the inconceivable. So because it considers the limitless to have the limited, it means that without the inconceivable, man cannot be a conceivable entity. So the fact that we're defining reality based on conception is one side of the coin. It's impossible, it's incomplete. This means that because as long as we treat ourselves as only conceivable entities, we can never know this world. Because consciousness seems to be how the other side of the coin is not the life of a form in the void. It's the life of the void in the form, or the forms in the void. When Plato said the world of forms, he was speaking about a state of consciousness where you suddenly see every person, everything you have seen in this life visually is geometry. Everything is geometric. It's beautiful. You know, in Dragon Ball Z, this anime, they said Goku and Vegeta were from a warrior species. The human species is from a designer species. We're creatures that, what does survival mean? What does adaptation mean? The creature noticed better geometry. So, guys, let me tell you what's happening. So I've been looking at this life. I've been thinking about what can be done. I've been thinking about what is the value. Is the value to be an individual human being? Is the value to get a collective experience? Is the meaning of life to follow a private path? That means, should I focus on my relationship with existence, right? Because the death to me would mean, in some sense, my attention and existence are in some sense re-relating, realigning. When you realize you're a conditional entity, you become grateful for just how you're being, just how all the cells, everything in the moment is holding the moment for something to recognize it's even here. Right? So it depends on where the attention is pushed. If the attention is pushed beyond the human framework, I have to start treating myself in a dehumanized way. Right? That means I'm not going to just be a human being if my attention is present beyond this life. Right? But if I am alive, let's say give it like, I don't know, 50 years, 40 years or something. And in that time, I was thinking, in the human reality, the outer realms just requires development. That means I've given enough talks to this point where I feel like the Logos is telling me, all right, buddy, you got to wait and go do something else. And then in some sense, when the advanced humanity poetically finds Mr. Within, then you come back. Right? So there's that kind of vibe, right? At the same time, right, I thought about, like, in some sense, it's like very fascinating because I see 3 areas of advancement. Pretty much in this world, you can advance yourself, you can advance others, and then you can advance the world. Now, here's the cool thing. When you advance the world, you're also advancing others, right? When you advance others, you're also advancing yourself. And when you advance yourself, you can also advance others. And when you advance yourself, you can also advance the world. So in any of these 3 like concentric circles, there's advancement, okay, in regards to self, species, and world, self, others, and world. You see, these are the three areas, and our fears come from these, right? So we have a fear of our own self not existing. We have a fear of others not existing. Then we have a fear of our world existing, right? Not existing, right? So these are three different levels of fear. The level of the world not existing, that's an intense fear, right? The human species is too mature for physical war. What has started as a conversation must end as a conversation, you know? The United Nations has to just make it illegal, has to make it just illegal for there to be physical war. You understand? And this means, and people are like, yo, does this mean we gotta stop creating guns? I'll be like, no, you can create guns, but you create guns as like decor. I don't know. What I'm trying to say is what can be resolved non-physically should be before physically. So, what did I write in the subtitle? Let me see this. New inner realm activation for the human species. Oh my God. Let me see. I feel like I should find a quote from Terence McKenna about novelty here. Alright guys, I'm going to go into a quote tunnel. Terence McKenna, the imagination is the golden pathway to everywhere. Wow, well said. Terence McKenna says animals are something invented by plants to move seeds around. An extremely yang solution to a peculiar problem which they faced. Guys, to be honest, it could be that we're here thinking like human beings are like working for we're thinking like we're superior to plants, but it could be the plant kingdoms like, yo, we're the ones keeping the human kingdom alive. Do you understand? If the human kingdom dishonors us, they die. You understand? So it could be that the plant kingdom is running the whole show, and the animal kingdom and the human kingdom are like servants of the plant kingdom indirectly, like in the outer realms. Terence McKenna says nature conserves, prefers novelty. Terence McKenna says we are so much the victims of abstraction that with the earth in flames, we can barely rouse ourselves to wander across the room and look at the thermostat. Oh my God. Wow. What he's saying is that human beings are suffering because of imaginary events to such a degree that they've become ignorant of how the ship is sinking in the outer realms. Terence McKenna says what is unusual about the earth is that language literally has become alive. It has infested matter. It is replicating and defining and building itself, and it is in us. Yeah, I mean, he's kind of treating language like a virus, because Terence McKenna saw the ego as the problem. Right? And I'm different in Mr.Withinian view. The ego is like an Iron Man suit. If it's how you use it, that's a problem. It's not wrong to be an individual, but it's inefficient to be an ignorant individual. Meaning that you have to ground yourself in collective visions. That means some people just think knowledge is about learning new concepts. That's bullshit. Knowledge is about discovering new contexts, where once you discover the new context and you ask a question, concepts automatically arise or are extracted. Think of it this way: we all have different DNA. It's the first time we're all existing to ourselves. We don't know our ability. Like, we don't know if we have X-Men powers right now, right? I mean, sometimes I was looking at my beard in the mirror and I'm like, yo, man, I'm starting to look like Wolverine. It's like... Terence McKenna says the discs which haunt the skies of Earth indicate that the unconscious cannot be kept waiting forever. These things are going to have to be dealt with. I don't know if by discs he means orbits, or he means UFOs, or he means a floppy disk. I don't know. Can you imagine somebody threw a floppy disk in the sky? Terence McKenna's like, somebody has to deal with all these freaking floppy disks in the sky, and everybody's like, what? It's like, that's only happening to you, man. That joke. Guys, this might sound ridiculous, but I have a memory of, as a kid, kicking a floppy disk on the ground and having it hit the corner of a wall. Now, what is the metaphysical implication of this memory? It's like, you shouldn't always kick technology. Terence McKenna says there are times when everything seems to go right and times when everything seems to go wrong. Terence McKenna says that's what a god is, somebody who knows more than you do about whatever you're dealing with. No, I mean, Terence McKenna was strange. He in some sense became an atheist to detach himself from the spirituality of his childhood, and then went discovered the new spirituality through shamanism, right? So sometimes you have to reject who you are, or just literally forget who you are to realize who you can become. It's strange. This doesn't mean forget forever, just it means your attention goes on judging your value based on who you will be in the future than who you have been in the past, right? Because you see, the past is known, the future is unknown. Right now, I don't know, who I'm going to be in the future. But the cool thing is that the future happens. We have minds that are just noticing a massive existential event happening. Experience means, in some sense, existence means just realizing you're in somewhere, you're in a location. Consciousness means noticing existence. And then what can consciousness do? And this is where it gets a bit more mysterious. But it's kind of like, some people have this panpsychist view that everything is consciousness, which means that they're indirectly being solipsists. Or they're being a sort of divine solipsist in disguise. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying that's one way to experience everything in one way. You know what I mean? Terence McKenna says, without sounding too cliche, the internet really is the birth of global mind. Terence McKenna says history is just this fourth of artifact production. History is just this froth of artifact production. that has appeared in the last 10 to 15,000 years. It's spread across the planet very quickly, but that mind in man just goes back and back into the darkness. Guys, history has had such an important role in grounding people. Do you understand? History was like the hammer that in some sense people use to find commonality of narrative, right? Terence McKenna says, I live up about the 2,000 feet level on a 5-acre piece of forest that I built a small house on. Okay, there's definitely not enough quotes here. Terence McKenna says, I think of going to the grave without having a psychedelic experience, like going to the grave without ever having sex. It means that you never figured out what it is all about. The mystery is in the body and the way the body works itself into nature. I mean, no comment. I can't, some things, it's just, the realities are so far that I can't touch. If the words life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness don't include the right to experiment with your own consciousness, then the Declaration of Independence isn't worth the hemp it was written on. Guys, about the previous thing, see, Terence McKenna, see, human beings, I gave a talk earlier this week called, I don't know earlier this week, but I just gave a talk before called The Type of Being You Are is a Strategy to Death, or something in those lines. And so it depends on your reality, right? It depends on how much you have experienced yourself and how much events in life mean to you. You see, it's not just something a teacher can teach you. It's all about how your mind is looking at ink on a piece of paper and then wondering and envisioning about meaning. So you have to be street smart in wondering about what reality means in a way that only you can see. Street smart means you're just trying to take as much angles and information as possible and then act. I mean, what else could... Terence McKenna says, if you don't smoke cannabis, you may spend your evening balancing your checking account. If you do smoke cannabis, you may spend your evening contemplating the causes of the Greek Renaissance. Guys, I've said this before. The best time to quit smoking is before you ever, smoke your, first whatever. In the future, I'm probably going to write this in my, make a note of this in my science fiction, that about the sober state. I think I talked about it in one lecture. In civilization and advanced civilization, there's going to be sectors, and based on the behavior of people, they get access to those sectors. So in that way, we create a sort of a mini paradise in civilization that every human being that is in a non-paradise experience of an inefficient civilization. Do you understand? I'm pretty much saying it would be something like at the center of a civilization 1.0, we started to build civilization 2.0. But this is something for another talk. Anyways, Terence McKenna says, stop consuming images and start producing them. Terence McKenna says, you're a divine being. You matter. You count. You come from realms of unimaginable power and light, and you will return to those realms. Terence McKenna says, you are an explorer, and you represent our species, and the greatest good you can do is to bring back... You are an explorer and you represent our species, and the greatest good you can do is to bring back a new idea. Because our world is endangered by the absence of good ideas. Our world is in crisis because of the absence of consciousness. You know what that means? That means our world is in a crisis because we're not looking at it properly. Terence McKenna says the male dominant agenda is so fragile that any competitor is felt as a deadly foe. Yeah, so guys, keep in mind, Terence McKenna had this view that the ego is a bad thing. Okay? I think this is an inefficient view, so I'm disagreeing with him. But he's saying the male dominant agenda is so fragile. And you know why? It's not that it's fragile, it's that it's experienced fighting such heavy opponents that it immediately gets rid of smaller ones to not waste time. I think that's the case. Then we go to 8. You simply have to turn your back on a culture. This is the 8th quote here. Terence McKenna says you simply have to turn your back on a culture that has gone sterile and dead, and get with the program of living a world and the program of a living world and the imagination. Terence McKenna says the imagination is the goal of history. I see culture as an effort to literally realize our collective dreams. Okay, I guess what he's saying here is that evolution made an object into a subject to itself, but consciousness finds itself capable of moving and experiencing various subjects as they come and go, whether on whim or not. And then, what is culture? Culture is literally the potential of what are the mind of our ancestors that actualized, right? So similarly, what it is like this invisible being experienced itself through an individual, then decided to experience itself through multiple individuals, then decided to experience itself controlling all the individuals at the same time. This is why the energy of mobs, or the energy of like groups of people and movements, it's like there's something different. Do you understand? There's a different feeling. You know, sometimes, I've heard of, people in theosophical, esoteric, and metaphysical circles being able to command beings. But there is this saying also that they say you must serve before you can command. And so, in order to command, when it comes to the context of divinity, you are not the commander. So the idea is that your body is like the soldier, your mind is the commanding officer, and in some sense, your soul is the general. Okay, but who is the emperor of the kingdom? That's the idea of God. So the soul is the inconceivable guardian, is the individual extension of an inconceivable collective being. So that's what we are, okay? From the theological context. You see, it doesn't matter man made a sin. What was man made of? What is man? And this is where God is laughing as if man never fell from the heavens. Only in his mind he did. They say Adam and Eve fell, right? But they didn't say Adam and Eve's souls fell. Or maybe they did, I don't know. Maybe a theologian can correct me on this. And I always thought, where did God make earth? We think the earth is separate from the heavens. But when we ask ourselves, before God made earth, there was the heaven. So we know that there was only the heavens before there was the creation of man and earth. So God creates man, man makes a mistake, then there comes the necessity for earth. So the idea is, if the only place there was before God created man was heaven, then the only place there can be a planet made is in heaven. This is another way of saying earth is in the heavens. In a sort of secular Aristotle would say something this way. But it would be of saying earth theologically is made in the heavens. So life on earth or in other dimensions is actually, it's like truth. It's like the simulation is being broadcasted from the truth. Or we're receiving the broadcast of truth as a simulation. When I say broadcast, I mean live streaming of consciousness. Terrence McKenna says you simply have to no, I've read that. Oh my god, here we go. Terrence McKenna talking about psychedelics. The message of psychedelics is that culture can be re-engineered as a set of emotional, spiritual values rather than products. This is terrifying news. I mean, I guess in the sense that what is culture? Culture, first we had creatures just being animals. Then they began becoming groups. Then there was nomadic culture. Then from nomadism, they were like, yo, why are we moving around so much? And they went to agriculturalism, right? From agriculturalism, they started building tools, they started, farming the land, and at some point they started building superior tools, and then superior visions came into play, and then we went to industrialization, and then we went to urbanization. So all these children of farmers felt like it was their destiny to go work in cities that had never existed before, right? I wondered why so many people, right? Why, people were living in the industrial era, right? How were they living in that unbearable toxic environment? And I realized because to them it was the coolest thing ever. It was like they were living in the closest thing to an advanced civilization at the time. So from industrialization, people were like, okay, we're going to come and work around where the value is being generated. So then we went to urbanization. In urbanization, we began having presumptions of the different context of human behavior, right? And people strangely began becoming closer to one another. It's kind of genius, right? Even though it's towns and downtowns are crowded, but it's kind of genius if you look at it from an aerial view, that it's a concentration point of consciousness. For example, when you look at it in the Muslim world, this is very incredible. It's like the Kaaba, the direction where all Muslims pray. Let's say the quickest direction on a sphere that towards this point where Muslims pray. It's like a centralization of human consciousness at one point, in one instance, okay? And we find these in many places, right? I have wondered, an advancement beyond the mind means like a spiritual life. Many people think they're living a spiritual life in 2023. But guess what? You're living a spiritual inner life. Because the outer realms is not a spiritual world. We're in Kali Yuga. We're in the world where the gods have gone into the upper realms and only the bravest of the bravest are down here. Do you understand? We're on the battlefield. We're in the front lines, right? So it's as if we're in the fields of Normandy, and in some sense, it's like those the great authorities are in a place where they can't be hurt. Right? But it's up to us to, in some sense, endure this time. So in some sense, it's like some people are like, yo man, Kali Yuga is the worst time to incarnate as an eternal being, to incarnate from an eternal position into a temporary creature. But Kali Yuga is kind of like Vegeta going into that gravity capsule thing, right? And in some sense, in that gravity chamber, right? And in some sense, training, right? Any being that is conscious in Kali Yuga, and you in some sense, it's kind of bizarre, but in regards to a Greek kairos sense of time, do the right thing, you're cultivating a next level skill. Do you understand? This world is designed so incredibly that if you are not afraid of it, it's obligated to, this is the thing. It is so big that it can't make sense to us completely, but it can make sense to us in chunks. And really, human beings are never actually experiencing the same world. They're experiencing chunks of the same world. Terence McKenna says nature loves courage. You make the commitment and nature will respond to that commitment by removing impossible obstacles. Dream the impossible dream and the world will not grind you under it. It will lift you up. This is the trick. This is what all these teachers and philosophers who really counted, who really touched the alchemical gold, this is what they understood. This is the shamanic dance in the waterfall. This is how magic is done, by hurling yourself into the abyss and discovering it's a feather bed. Yeah, do you know what this means? This means that because you're alive in an unknown world, to not go for the unknown is to not actually understand the world we're in. We're told this world is known and people think it's just a known strategy. Sure. Do you understand? It's like we've made safety more important than exploration, so the civilization is emotionally satisfied but actually going to become so frustrated because the system's not updating, right? So the biggest challenge is the outer realms have to catch up to the inner realms. Right now, the only reason we can be bodies is because our minds are moving faster than them. All right, let's keep going. Terence McKenna says half the time you think you're thinking, you're actually listening. Jesus. Terence McKenna says psychedelics are illegal, not because a loving government is concerned that you may jump out of a third-story window. Psychedelics are illegal because they dissolve opinion structures and culturally laid down models of behavior and information processing. They open you up to the possibility that everything you know is wrong. Okay, this is my opinion on psychedelics, okay? Because in Vancouver, Canada, it seems like they've banned a lot of restrictions. This is the thing about psychedelics, okay? Psychedelics you see, sometimes you can get bored of reality because you can't solve a problem, and then you think you need something else to solve the problem. Now the answer is you may need something, but you also may not. So the correct view would be to cultivate mastery of the sober state. And this might sound bizarre to people, but it's going to mean like until the age of 25, you don't touch psychedelics of any kind. You just try to stick with natural basic food, not even like sugar drinks and whatever, right? Do you know, this is the strictness we need with parents, because if the parent can't teach the child how to, because this is the thing, the child develops patterns that it has, like the child develops patterns of that it sees in the environment. Do you understand? Like they were saying this thing, why is it that single mothers, okay, their children suddenly become violent when there isn't a father figure around, right? For example, they were wondering about this. And the answer is the child becomes violent because the child has not had a very direct, see, the mother is like the yin force and the father is like the yang force traditionally, right? The yang means intensity. So the father has to, in some sense, give the kid boundaries, right? But the mother has the option of, in some sense, like feeding the child, making sure the child has to grow. When the single mother has to raise kids, and of course, this is something that I'm just 1 in 8 billion human beings giving an opinion here. You know, it's not like, don't take it too seriously, but this is just my view. Because the mother has to give the child, which is a sense of like opening up the child to the limitless nature of reality, right? the father is kind of there to open up the child to the limited nature of reality. Do you understand? That means, imagine, I mean, I don't have a kid, but if I had a kid, like, you know, out of nowhere, I'd probably like just push him and he'd fall to the ground. Do you know what I'm saying? Just very intensely push him. And he'd be like, why'd you do that? And I'd be like, okay, what's the solution? How can you prepare so this doesn't happen next time? Do you understand? So what I'm saying is, like, there needs to be some sort of force introduced to the mind of the early human being. If this force, if this yang force is not introduced, the child is going to feel frustrated that it wasn't introduced to this yang force by another, so it's going to try to express its own yang force. Do you understand? So what I'm saying is that this might sound bizarre, but single parents have to become bipolar to raise the kid properly. This is bizarre. Either find a partner or implement a bipolar strategy. What that means is you have to have like the sort of intensity. Do you understand? A sort of breaking intensity at the same time of preserving intensity. But I think that would be messed up, actually, because then the child will think that's normal. So in some sense, you know, in Japan, they had this next level thing where they had this service of, like, this blew my mind when I saw it online, where you can hire like a father role, mother role, a daughter, brother role. And in Japan, there's something called hikikomori. And hikikomori means that there is a sort of shyness and introvert death crisis going on. Like, it's becoming like, I mean, I don't know what Japan is like. I hope to live there one day, right? But it seems that, like, their cultural restrictions and their sensitivity of the implication of accessing culture is way more intense than, for example, in other countries. Anyways, either way, you know, the point is to introduce the child to a male archetype. So it would be, you know what it is? I don't know. It's going to be a very different era, you know, where the humanities being, you know, there was a scene in Attack on Titan where there's this scene I think it's in the second season, where there's this character called Erwin Smith. He's in the palace where there's this fake king, and he like exposes the fake king, right? And he pulls this stunt, and then he like technically wins in that situation. And this guy comes up to him and says, Erwin, this is your victory. But Erwin says, no, humanity has just stepped on a darker path than before. So what's going on is that human nature is descending from the traditional roots to some degree, meaning that human beings are behaving in new ways. At the same time, there's overpopulation, overcrowdedness, which means an infusion of minds, right? So what this means is that society is being pushed towards a polyamorous direction, but not now. I think maybe after 50 years, it's going to become like that, like suddenly, rapidly. But I don't know, who knows? Reality is so strange. Because it's something that's happening and you're just there. Imagine that some guy went up to an enlightened guy and it's like, hey, enlightened guy, and the person's like, are you here to be enlightened? The person's like, no. It's like, why are you here then? The person's like, I'm here to know why the world is here. Why is all of this here? And the person says, that's enlightenment, buddy. The poet Rumi says, out beyond ideas of right doing and wrong doing, there's a place. I will meet you there. And sometimes I wonder, how much does the event of nature care for what's in it? Like it's kind of like the world doesn't care for how it looks like because it's changing all the time. And the human being cares for how it looks like because there's others that look like it. Like sometimes I think about if I was stranded on an island, would I shave? And I'd be like, okay, I'd probably not shave and then use my beards as like turn my beards into some sort of blanket or something. Or some sort of rope. Probably not rope, but or use it as fire kindling or something, But the idea is that because there are others, right now we have the privilege of being a visible self consciously, and we have the privilege of communicating with the visible others in a visible world. This is an incredible advantage. That means even though we don't know what we are, we have something to look at to, in some sense, extract clues from. So the mysteries of divinity, the mysteries of the universe, the secrets of the universe, we might not know where the answers are, but we know where the clues are. The clues are right in front of us. Your experience of your own existence is the mystery of your consciousness. And this is something that nobody can teach you because nobody has your eyes. Right? If somebody comes and teaches you, tries to act like they have your eyes, it becomes impossible because then they would be you. It would be weird. So the first thing about this life to realize that even though biologically we have our skeletal structures look alike, we are opportunities, ancient opportunities that have in some sense come to their own modernity. I look at this world and I see like human beings. Just take a karmic approach, guys. Just hear me out here. Just for a second, think of the karma of a planet in one frame of time. So right now, I see like a majority of human beings are walking. They're being physically moving as a body. A majority of human beings on the planet are probably driving vehicles right now. A majority of human beings are sitting. So all the things that human beings are doing is being part of the karma of the species. Whether it's a beautiful act or it's a disgusting act or whatever it is. And keep in mind, the reason Adam and Eve fell from the Garden of Eden in theological tradition is because their sin was the sin of doing something impure. And the moment they bit from the fruit, their genitalia appeared. Right? And then they were not worthy of being in heaven, which was, I think it was a place for eternal non-sexual shaped entities, So man's sin was that he tasted duality. But you see, God could have, in some sense, made the Garden of Eden impenetrable by anything, right? But God was watching, right? We think that God wasn't watching, when in some sense the deception happened. But God was watching. And to me it's bizarre, because God could have destroyed the rebel, but instead God decided to prove. See, God could have destroyed evil, but God decided to prove evil wrong, as if it wanted to teach the lesser, to teach the lower of the upper. You see, that means, imagine God loved all his creations, and he even loved all his angels, to such a degree that when one angel doubted his creation, right, it was like one sibling doubting another sibling from God's view, right? Excuse me, one child doubting another child. There was a time when Hafiz spoke about the friend in his poetry, I thought he was, talking about Mr.Within. The archetype of the friend of God. How will the inner realms of the species activate? The inner realms is what you see behind your eyes. The inner realms of the species will activate when advancements begin happening in the outer realms. What that means is it's the expression of greatness. Right now, it's like we are, the species is acting like the sleeping, is acting like the sleeping genius giant. The sleeping giant genius. What that means is it's like there's this great power within all human beings, but this power will not activate based on a desire. It activates based on a necessity. So think about, there's different power potentials all scattered all around the surface of the planet. These power potentials activate not because somebody just desires them or takes them by force, but because someone goes in accordance to necessity, right? For example, you look at the anime Dragon Ball Z, you see the character Vegeta, and you look at the character Goku. You see Goku's karma and you see Vegeta's karma. Goku is comparing himself to his past self. Vegeta is comparing himself to Goku. Vegeta's search for power is based on his desire to surpass Goku. But Goku's desire for power, sure, it is a desire to surpass his past self, but it is also, he's like this foolish, peaceful guy, this honest fool, right? But only when something serious happens. He's like a sleeping giant, like a sleeping, like a sleeping dumbass, but suddenly when serious events happen, the genius giant appears. All fools have a genius giant sleeping, or like a genius giant that's sleeping. It just activates through vision, through wonder, and when our future becomes more fascinating than our past and how our present is, right? When I was younger, I had the connotation that boredom wasn't a good state, right? But you might not believe it. It's like we have to be bored of what we have now it's weird. We have to be grateful from a view of the past of what we have now, but after we've been grateful for it, we have to in some sense use it for the future. Do you understand? This life is never about just being in one moment. Everything that's coming to you is reflecting back from you, so you have a choice. Terence McKenna says the artist's task is to save the soul of mankind, and anything less is a dithering while Rome burns. If artists cannot find the way, then the way cannot be found. Well said. Animals are something invented by plants to move seeds around. I read that. The syntactical nature of reality, the real secret of magic, is that the world is made of words. And if you know the words that the world is made of, you can make of it whatever you wish. Yeah, this is the inner realms and the linguistic simulation. I've given a lot of talks on this. Terence McKenna says the purpose of life is to familiarize oneself with the after-death body so that the act of dying will not create confusion in the psyche. Yeah, the yogis would say, discover your presence before your personality. Your presence beyond your personality. Terence McKenna says we tend to disempower ourselves. We tend to believe that we don't matter. And in the act of taking that idea to ourselves, we give everything away to somebody else, to something else. The shaman is not merely a sick man or a madman. He is a sick man who has healed himself. Terence McKenna says, you see, a secret is not something untold. It's something which can't be told. Terence McKenna says, if you don't have a plan, you become part of somebody else's plan. My God. Whether we know it or not, guys, the advanced civilization is the greatest idea, and all ideological systems will come to that conclusion in the outcomes. Terence McKenna says, nature is not our enemy to be raped and conquered. Nature is ourselves to be cherished and explored. Powerful. Terence McKenna says, we have been to the moon, we have charted the depths of the ocean and the heart of the atom. But we have a fear of looking inward to ourselves because we sense that that is where all the contradictions flow together. Terence McKenna says, my technique is don't believe anything. If you believe in something, you're automatically precluded from believing its opposite. Wow. Wow. He's saying if you believe something, because most things are in the dualistic context, you're believing in one side of the coin. So if you believe in something, you've believed in one side of the coin, so you won't see the other side. Anyways, one last quote, and Terence McKenna says, we can begin the restructuring of thought by declaring legitimate what we have denied for so long. Let us declare nature to be legitimate. The notion of illegal plants is obnoxious and ridiculous in the first place. Terence, okay, I'll keep reading. Let's see if there's more quotes. Some kind of dialogue is now going on between individual human beings and the sum total of human knowledge, and nothing can stop it. Let's go. Terence McKenna says culture is not your friend. Culture is for other people's convenience and the convenience of various institutions, churches, companies, tax collection schemes, what have you. It is not your friend. It insults you. It disempowers you. It uses and abuses you. None of us are well treated by culture. Yeah, because it's kind of this weird situation where the culture, where like the system doesn't care for us and we don't care for the system, so nothing's happening. Terence McKenna says culture is a perversion. It fetishizes objects, creates consumer mania. It preaches endless forms of false happiness, endless forms of false understanding in the form of squirrely religions and silly cults. It invites people to diminish themselves and dehumanize themselves by behaving like machines. Terence McKenna says chaos is what we've lost touch with. This is why it is given a bad name. It is feared by the dominant archetype of our world, which is ego, which clenches because its existence is defined in terms of control. Terence McKenna says ego is a structure that is erected by a neurotic individual who is a member of a neurotic culture against the facts of the matter, and culture, which we put on like an overcoat, is the collectivized consensus about what sort of neurotic behaviors are acceptable. Terence McKenna's lucky he wasn't born in a third world country. Terence McKenna says the apocalypse is not something which is coming. The apocalypse has arrived in major portions of the planet, and it's only because we live within a bubble of incredible privilege and social insulation that we still have the luxury of anticipating the apocalypse. If you go to Bosnia or Somalia or Peru or much of the third world, then it appears that the apocalypse has already arrived. Okay, so he's been to the third war. Terence McKenna says, we are caged by our cultural programming. Culture is a mass hallucination, and when you step outside the mass hallucination, you see it for what it's worth. And finally, Terence McKenna says, the internet is the light at the end of the tunnel. It is creating a global society. Alright, what else can I say here? So guys, pretty much the inner realms, think of it this way, that the inner realms is an ability to take the outer realms into a limitless invisible art studio overlaid upon the outer realms, and to experience different photoshopped versions of reality, which I call probabilities. Okay, so it's kind of like we're not just a physical being, even though we were raised to think that like that, but we're actually a physical and a non-physical being. Think of it poetically as you're a creature of body, a creature of mind, a creature of a known body, and a creature of an unknown mind. So this means that you can start wondering about your unknown mind. Your advancement and the most advanced state, like think about it, like why not in this lifetime try to see the most advanced state of your being? That seems to be the dream of dreams for all dreams, the most advanced state of all states. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I hope this episode was interesting. Share, subscribe, like, comment, join. It takes a second. Much blessings and namaste. Rise, mankind, rise. The world is waiting.